I thought I knew betrayal until I found those messages on her phone. The woman I trusted with my life, my heart, and my son was living a double life right under my nose. When she served me divorce papers and tried to take my son away, I had two choices: crumble or fight. For years later, when she saw me at our son's graduation, the look on her face was worth every ounce of pain I'd endured. She thought she destroyed me. She couldn't have been more wrong. My name is Warren Strickland. I'm 52 years old, and I've spent the last 2 decades of my life as a neuromarketing specialist, analyzing how the human brain responds to various stimuli and helping companies craft campaigns that connect with people on a deeper level. Ironic, isn't it? I could read other people's emotional responses so well, but I completely missed the signs in my own marriage. It all started in Chicago, during an industry conference I almost didn't attend. My colleague had fallen ill at the last minute, and I was asked to present in his place. I've been working nonstop for weeks on a major campaign for a healthcare client, and the thought of adding a 3-day conference to my schedule nearly made me decline. Looking back, I sometimes wonder how different my life would be if I had. The conference was held at the Drake Hotel, one of those grand old buildings with character etched into every corner. After my presentation on the final day, I decided to unwind to the hotel bar. That's where I met Tamara. She sat 2 seats away, nursing what looked like a whiskey sour, a notebook open in front of her. What caught my attention wasn't just her appearance, though she was striking with her auburn hair and sharp green eyes, but the intensity with which she was reviewing her notes. Preparing for tomorrow? I asked, more out of politeness than actual curiosity. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. No, actually analyzing what went wrong today. I'm always tougher on myself than any boss could be. That simple exchange led to a conversation that lasted hours. Tamara Hendricks was a marketing director for a rival firm, attending the same conference. She was smart, ambitious, and had a way of speaking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We talked shop at first, then moved on to books, travel, and life philosophies. I believe that if you're not constantly evolving, you're dying, she told me, signaling for another drink. People get comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of growth. I nodded, captivated by her confidence. I've always thought stability was underrated. Stability is just another word for stagnation, she replied with a challenging smile. By the time we parted ways, business cards had been exchanged, and something had ignited between us, something that felt both exciting and dangerous. I was 48 then, divorced once already from a brief marriage in my 20s, and I'd learned to be cautious. But there was something about Tamara that made caution seem like cowardice. I didn't expect to hear from her again. Chicago was her territory. Minneapolis was mine. But the very next week, my phone rang with a Chicago area code. She was coming to Minneapolis for a client meeting and wondered if I might be available for dinner. That dinner changed the trajectory of both our lives, setting us on a collision course with destiny neither of us could have predicted. That first dinner with Tamara turned into weekly video calls between Minneapolis and Chicago. We'd talk about our latest projects, sharing industry insights, and slowly revealing more about our personal lives. There was something refreshing about connecting with someone who understood the demands of my career, who didn't make me feel guilty for my late hours or sudden deadline crunches. After 3 months of this long-distance dance, Tamara suggested meeting halfway, a weekend in Madison, Wisconsin. I remember driving those 4 hours with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that I hadn't felt in decades. At 48, I thought I was past the butterflies in stomach phase of dating, but there I was checking my hair in the rearview mirror like a teenager. We stayed at a boutique hotel near Lake Mendota and spent the weekend exploring the city, talking endlessly, and discovering that our connection was even stronger in person. By Sunday afternoon, sitting on the terrace of a lakeside restaurant, I realized I was falling hard for this woman. "What are we doing here, Warren?" Tamara asked, her fingers intertwined with mine across the table. "This isn't exactly convenient for either of us. Since when do you prioritize convenience over growth?" I countered, recalling her words from our first meeting. She laughed, squeezing my hand. "Touché. But seriously, I'm not interested in a casual fling that fizzles out because of geography." "Neither am I," I said with a conviction that surprised even me. "I think we owe it to ourselves to explore this, wherever it leads." Over the next 6 months, our relationship deepened through weekend visits, late-night calls, and shared professional victories. When Tamara's firm offered to open a Minneapolis office and suggested she lead it, it felt like the universe was conspiring in our favor. "They want me to build a team from the ground up," she told me over the phone, excitement evident in her voice. "It's a huge opportunity, Warren." "That's incredible," I replied, trying to contain my own enthusiasm. "Have you thought about where you'd live?" There was a pause on the line before she responded. "Actually, I was hoping we could talk about that. What would you think about us looking for a place together?" 2 weeks later, I was helping Tamara move into my loft in the North Loop neighborhood. My colleagues thought I was rushing things, but at our age, we both learned that when something feels right, you don't waste time second-guessing. We fell into a comfortable routine surprisingly quickly. Mornings were a choreographed dance of coffee brewing, shower switching, and brief strategy sessions for our respective days. Evenings were for unwinding, sharing wins and challenges, cooking together, or ordering in. Weekends became adventures, exploring Minnesota's lakes, trying new restaurants, or simply relaxing at home. 6 months after she moved in, during a weekend trip to the North Shore, I proposed. It wasn't an elaborate affair, just the two of us on a rocky outcrop overlooking Lake Superior, the morning sun turning the water into a field of diamonds. "I never expected to find you," I said, holding her hands in mine. "But now that I have, I can't imagine life without you." When she said yes, I felt like the luckiest man alive. I had no idea that this happiness was merely the setup for what would come next. Tamara and I married 6 months after my proposal, in a ceremony overlooking the Mississippi River. It wasn't extravagant, just close friends and family, good food, and better wine. At 49, I had no interest in a spectacle. I wanted something authentic, like what we'd built together. Our honeymoon in Tuscany gave us a chance to disconnect from work and truly appreciate what we'd found in each other. Wandering through vineyards hand in hand, I remember thinking that some men search their whole lives for this kind of connection and never find it. "What are you smiling about?" Tamara asked one evening as we watched the sunset from our villa's terrace. "Just counting my blessings," I replied, pulling her closer. "I thought my best years were behind me. You proved me wrong." Back in Minneapolis, we settled into married life with surprising ease. I expanded my neuromarketing consultancy, while Tamara's new office flourished under her leadership. We purchased a historic brownstone in Summit Hill, spending weekends restoring its original features while adding modern touches. It was our project, our sanctuary, our future. A year after our wedding, Tamara announced she was pregnant. The news hit me like a thunderbolt. At 50, I hadn't expected to become a father. Yet once the initial shock wore off, I embraced the idea with everything I had. I threw myself into preparations, converting the third-floor study into a nursery, reading parenting books, even taking a woodworking class to build a crib by hand. My colleagues joked that I'd gone from marketing executive to carpenter overnight. "Some things you need to do yourself," I told them, proudly showing photos of the finished crib, sanded smooth with rounded edges and a hand-carved mobile hanging above. When our son Michael was born, I held that tiny person in my arms and felt a love I hadn't known existed. Work, which had always been my driving force, suddenly shifted to second place. I negotiated a 4-day work week, determined to be present for every milestone. "You're a natural," Tamara said one night, finding me in the nursery, rocking Michael back to sleep after a feeding. "It's easy when it matters this much," I replied, carefully laying our son back in the crib I'd built with my own hands. Those first 2 years were exhausting but magical. Michael grew from a helpless infant to a curious toddler with my brown eyes and Tamara's determined chin. Our brownstone filled with the sounds of tiny feet and childish laughter. Tamara and I were tired but fulfilled, partners in the greatest adventure of our lives. We weren't perfect. We had disagreements about parenting styles and struggled with balance. But we tackled challenges together, stronger as a team than we ever could have been alone. I had everything I'd never dared to dream of: a thriving business, a beautiful home, a loving wife, and a son who looked at me like I hung the moon. Life was good, until it wasn't. The shift was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Tamara's firm landed a major international client, bringing new pressures and longer hours. I was supportive. I understood ambition and the thrill of professional growth. So when she started missing family dinners or arriving home after Michael was asleep, I picked up the slack without complaint. "You're sure you don't mind?" she'd ask, already packing her briefcase for another late meeting. "We're fine," I'd assure her, Michael on my hip. "Go change the world. We'll be here when you get back." I meant it too. I'd adjusted my schedule to handle school drop-offs, doctor appointments, and playdates. My own clients understood. Many were parents themselves. When I showed up to meetings with a portfolio in one hand and a dinosaur lunchbox in the other, they just smiled knowingly. But as months passed, Tamara's absences grew longer and more frequent. Business trips extended from overnight to weekend to week-long affairs. Video calls with Michael became shorter as she repeatedly cited meetings that couldn't wait. When she was home, she was distracted, constantly checking emails or stepping away for urgent phone conferences. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" Michael would ask, and I'd find myself making excuses I wasn't sure I believed anymore. One evening, after putting our 5-year-old son to bed, I decided to address the elephant in the room. Tamara was in her home office, typing furiously on her laptop. "Can we talk?" I asked from the doorway. "Can it wait? I'm finalizing this proposal and—" "No," I said firmly, surprising us both with my tone. "It can't wait. I've been waiting for months." She looked up, really seeing me for the first time in what felt like forever. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means our son asked me today if you still live here," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "Because he can't remember the last time you tucked him in." Her face softened momentarily before her professional mask slipped back into place. "That's not fair, Warren. I'm building something important, something that benefits all of us." "We didn't need more benefits," I replied, keeping my voice level. "We needed you present." "I can't believe you're making me feel guilty for being successful," she snapped, shutting her laptop with more force than necessary. "Success isn't just about career advancement," I countered. "It's about building a life worth living." We used to understand that together. The argument escalated, old frustrations bubbling to the surface. No voices were raised. We were both too controlled for that. But the words cut deep on both sides. When Tamara's phone rang, and she actually answered it, turning away from our unresolved discussion, I felt something fundamental shift between us. "I have to take this," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Of course you do," I replied, already walking away. "You always do." That night, lying alone in our bed while Tamara worked downstairs, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly we'd started speaking different languages. And more importantly, if we would ever find a way back to understanding each other again. 4 weeks after our confrontation, Tamara and I existed in a state of cold détente. We were civil for Michael's sake, but the warmth had vanished from our interactions. I kept hoping she'd recognize what was happening to our family and make adjustments. Instead, she threw herself even deeper into her work. The tipping point came on Michael's 6th birthday. I'd planned a special celebration, nothing extravagant, just a backyard party with a few of his friends from school. Tamara had promised to be there, had even taken the afternoon off, a rare concession that gave me hope. The party was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 2:30, with a yard full of expectant children and apologetic parents, I was still checking my phone for messages. By 3:15, I'd stopped looking. "Where's Mommy?" Michael asked, his paper birthday crown slightly askew, eyes scanning the entrance to the yard whenever the gate creaked. "She's trying her best to get here, buddy," I said, hating to lie but unwilling to ruin his day. The party ended at 5. As the last guest left, I was cleaning up plates of half-eaten cake when I heard the front door open. Tamara rushed into the backyard, still in her business attire, looking flustered. "I'm so sorry," she began, eyes darting around the empty yard. "The client meeting ran over, and then there was traffic and—" "He waited for you," I said quietly, my calm voice belying the storm inside me. "For 3 hours. He kept telling his friends his mom was coming, that she had an important job, but wouldn't miss his special day." Tamara's face crumpled. "Warren, please. You know I wouldn't have missed it intentionally. Where is he?" "I can still." "He's upstairs with Mrs. Abernathy from next door. She's reading him a story because I needed a minute to—" I gestured at the debris of the party, but we both knew I meant a minute to pull myself together. "This isn't about me being upset, Tamara. This is about our son learning that he can't count on you." "That's not fair," she snapped, defensive anger replacing remorse. "One missed birthday doesn't make me a bad mother." It's not one birthday. I counter, my voice steady. It's every soccer practice, every parent-teacher conference, every bedtime story for months. You're becoming a ghost in his life. I'm building a future for us. For him. He doesn't need the future you're building. He needs his mother, now today. The argument escalated until we were both saying things we couldn't take back. Finally, Tamara grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? I asked, suddenly exhausted. Your son still hasn't seen you. I need space to think. I'll stay at the condo downtown tonight. And what should I tell Michael? She paused, hand on the doorknob. Tell him Mommy had an emergency. After she left, I sat alone in our kitchen, the remnants of birthday cake still on the counter. When Michael came downstairs asking for his mother, I made yet another excuse. But as I tucked him in that night, watching his brave attempt not to show disappointment, I knew something had to change. I just never expected the change to come in the form of divorce papers delivered to my office 2 weeks later. The divorce papers hit me like a physical blow. I stood in my office, staring at the legal documents while my assistant hovered anxiously in the doorway, unsure what to do about the courier who'd just delivered them. Will there be a response, sir? The young man asked. Not today, I managed, dismissing him with a nod. I closed my door and sat heavily in my chair, flipping through pages of cold legalese that proposed to dismantle my life. Tamara wanted full custody of Michael, with generous visitation for me. She wanted to keep the brownstone. She wanted a significant portion of my business assets, claiming her connections had contributed to my recent success. But the betrayal cut deeper than the demands. Without a single conversation about separation, without any attempt at counseling or reconciliation, she'd made this life-altering decision unilaterally. I drove home in a daze, dreading the conversation ahead. When I arrived, Tamara's car wasn't in the driveway. Inside, I found Mrs. Abernathy watching Michael. Your wife called and asked if I could stay late, she explained. Said she had an important dinner meeting. After putting Michael to bed, I sat in the dark kitchen, waiting for Tamara to return. Around midnight, headlights swept across the windows. I heard her key in the lock, then her surprised intake of breath when she saw me. Warren, I thought you'd be asleep. Hard asleep after being served divorce papers. I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She set down her purse deliberately. I was going to tell you tonight, before or after filing the paperwork. I knew you'd try to talk me out of it. Shouldn't I have had that chance? I asked, don't I deserve at least a conversation about why my marriage is ending? It's not working, Warren. We both know that. No, I don't know that. I know we're struggling. I know we need help. I didn't know you'd given up. She sighed, looking past me rather than at me. I haven't been happy for a long time. You never said that. Not once. You said you were busy, stressed, overwhelmed, but never unhappy. Would it have made a difference? She asked, finally meeting my gaze. Of course it would, I replied, my voice breaking slightly. I would have moved heaven and earth to make you happy. I still would. For a moment, I thought I saw something soften in her expression. Then her phone chimed from her purse. She didn't check it, but something in her posture changed. It's too late, she said quietly. I've made my decision. In that moment, watching her stand there, physically present but emotionally unreachable, I had a sudden, devastating realization. There's someone else, isn't there? The way she flinched told me everything. The pieces fell into place. The late meetings, the overnight trips, the emotional distance. Who is he? I asked, surprised by the calm in my voice. That's not important right now. It is to me. I stood, drawing myself to my full height. I deserve the truth, Tamara. After everything, I deserve at least that. She hesitated, then whispered a name. Someone from her firm. Someone she'd mentioned in passing numerous times. Someone I'd even met at company functions. I nodded once, then walked past her toward the stairs. I'll be sleeping in the guest room. We can discuss arrangements for Michael tomorrow. As I climbed the stairs, legs heavy as lead, I heard her softly say, I'm sorry. But sorry wasn't going to fix what had just been broken. The following months were the hardest of my life. What began as a mutual divorce quickly devolved into a bitter legal battle when I refused to accept Tamara's custody terms. I wasn't going to be reduced to a weekend father. Not after being the constant presence in Michael's life while Tamara built her career. Mr. Strickland, you need to understand the courts typically favor the mother, my attorney explained during our first meeting. Then get me a better attorney. I replied without hesitation. One who understands that typical doesn't mean just. I hired Patricia Donovan, a formidable divorce attorney known for her unwavering advocacy for father's rights. She didn't come cheap, but Michael was worth every penny. They're counting on you to back down, Patricia told me bluntly. Men often do, out of guilt or fear or exhaustion. Don't be that man. I wasn't. When Tamara's lawyer suggested I was being difficult by demanding equal custody, I didn't flinch. When they hinted that a drawn-out court battle would drain my finances, I simply asked Patricia to prepare for trial. You really want to put your son through this? Tamara asked during one of our rare direct conversations. I'm not the one who started this, I replied calmly. And I'm not the one trying to separate him from a parent who loves him. The turning point came during a custody evaluation. The court-appointed psychologist spent time with Michael, with each of us individually, and observing our parent-child interactions. Her report noted my deep involvement in Michael's daily life, contrasted with Tamara's frequent absences. In my professional opinion, she wrote, the child's primary attachment figure appears to be the father. When Tamara read those words, something changed in her approach. Her lawyer requested a settlement conference. Rather than the generous visitation initially offered, we negotiated a true co-parenting arrangement with equal time. I would keep my business assets. She would keep the brownstone. Michael would split his time between us. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about divorce is. But it protected my relationship with my son. That's all that mattered to me. The day our divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. Michael was with Tamara for the next 3 days. The silence was deafening. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly feel the loss, not just of my marriage, but of the future I'd envisioned for us. Then I did what I've been taught to do since childhood. I got up, made a plan, and got to work rebuilding. Not just a home for myself and Michael, but a life worth living. I refused to become the bitter ex-husband, the weekend dad who spoiled his kid to compensate for his absence. I would be present, consistent, and strong, the father Michael deserved. I just never expected how completely that commitment would change the trajectory of my life. A year after my divorce, I barely recognized my life, or myself. The corporate high-rise apartment I'd initially rented as a temporary measure had been replaced by a comfortable townhouse closer to Michael's school. I'd scale back my client roster, focusing on quality over quantity to ensure I could be present for my son during my parenting time. The biggest change, however, was internal. The man who had once defined himself largely through professional success now found meaning in different metrics. Michael's laughter, his growing confidence, the trust reflected in his eyes when he looked at me. Dad, are you sad about not living with Mom anymore? He asked one evening as I tucked him in. I was sad at first. I answered honestly. Change is hard, but I'm not sad anymore. I have you, and that makes me happy, even though it's just part-time. His 7-year-old face was serious. There's no such thing as part-time love, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair. You're my son all the time, whether you're here or at Mom's. Financial challenges followed the divorce. The legal fees had been substantial, and my reduced workload meant lower income. I downsized my office, let go of my assistant, and took on some of the administrative work myself. It was humbling, but also liberating. I discovered I needed far less than I'd thought to be content. I also found unexpected allies. Other divorced fathers reached out after hearing about my custody battle, seeking advice or simply solidarity. Their stories, often heartbreaking tales of being marginalized in their children's lives, reinforced my gratitude for having fought for equal parenting time. Recognizing a need, I started a monthly support group that met at a local coffee shop. What began as informal gatherings evolved into a network that connected fathers with resources, legal advice, and emotional support. I wasn't a therapist or a lawyer, just a man who'd been through the fire and wanted to help others navigate it. My professional life shifted too. My neuromarketing expertise, previously used primarily for corporate clients, found new application in helping nonprofits craft more effective messaging. I developed a particular focus on organizations supporting children of divorce, applying my professional skills to a cause that had become deeply personal. Dating wasn't on my radar. When well-meaning friends suggested setups, I declined politely but firmly. My energy was focused on rebuilding my life and being present for Michael. Romance could wait. You know, it's okay to be happy again, my sister told me during one of her visits. Michael would want that for you too. I am happy, I replied, realizing as I said it that it was true. Not the same happiness I'd known before, but something deeper, tempered by loss but strengthened by survival. I had no idea then that life was preparing to throw me another curveball, one that would bring both my greatest challenge and my most unexpected blessing. For years past since the divorce finalized, Michael, now 11, had adapted to our co-parenting arrangement with remarkable resilience. He was thriving in school, particularly in science and mathematics, reminding me daily of his boundless potential. My business had evolved in unexpected ways. The support network for divorced fathers had grown into a formal nonprofit organization, with workshops on effective co-parenting and advocacy for family court reform. My neuromarketing expertise now primarily served causes I believed in rather than corporate interests. Life had found a new rhythm, until Michael's school sent home information about his upcoming graduation from elementary school. There's a ceremony, Dad, he explained, handing me the letter, and then a reception after. You'll come, right? Wouldn't miss it for anything, I promised. That evening, my phone rang with Tamara's number. Our communications had become strictly practical over the years, limited to Michael's schedule and needs. Her call outside our usual pattern was unusual. Warren, she began, her voice hesitant. I wanted to discuss Michael's graduation. I've already requested the morning off, I replied, wondering if she was concerned about scheduling. It's not that, she paused. I'm wondering if you'd be comfortable with all of us attending together. Michael mentioned wanting a family photo. I felt my chest tighten. All of us meaning. You mean Michael. And Daniel. Daniel was her husband now, the man she'd left me for. My first instinct was refusal. The thought of standing beside them, pretending harmony, for a photo, felt like more than I could bear. But then I thought of Michael, of what this day meant to him. What does Michael want? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He wants both his parents there, proud of him, together, even if just for an hour. I closed my eyes, weighing my pride against my son's happiness. For Michael, I can do that. The following weeks, I prepared myself mentally for this encounter. I hadn't seen Tamara in person for nearly 2 years, our handoffs having evolved to drop-offs where we rarely crossed paths. I'd never met Daniel face-to-face, knowing only what Michael shared about his stepfather. I bought a new suit, got a haircut, even scheduled a session with my therapist to process my feelings before the event. This wasn't about me or Tamara or our past. This was about Michael, about giving him one uncomplicated day to celebrate his achievement. The morning of the graduation, I stood before my mirror adjusting my tie, rehearsing pleasant small talk, and reminding myself of what mattered most. I placed Michael's gift, a telescope he'd been coveting, in the car and drove to the school, my heart steadier than I'd expected. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the same dignity and strength that had carried me through these past 4 years. The elementary school auditorium buzzed with excitement as families gathered for the 5th grade graduation ceremony. I arrived early, securing a seat near the front where Michael would easily spot me. I was arranging his gift beside my chair when I sensed someone approaching. Warren. I looked up into Tamara's face, the face I'd once known better than my own, now made slightly unfamiliar by the passing years. She wore a blue dress I didn't recognize, her hair shorter than I remembered. Tamara, I nodded, rising to my full height. Good to see you. Her eyes widened slightly as she took me in, something unreadable flashing across her face. Behind her stood a man I assumed was Daniel, looking uncomfortable in the way people do when forced into awkward social situations. You look, she began, then seemed to reconsider her words. You seem well. Life's been good to me, I replied simply. It wasn't a lie. The years following our divorce had transformed me, not just mentally but physically. The stress eating that had added pounds during my marriage had been replaced by regular workouts and morning runs with Michael. My hair had a touch more silver at the temples, but my shoulders were broader, my posture more confident. Tamara introduced Daniel, and we exchanged the bland pleasantries of people connected by circumstance rather than choice. As we took our seats, I caught Tamara glancing at me repeatedly, something like regret or confusion in her expression. When Michael's name was called, we stood together, applauding as he accepted his certificate with a proud grin. He scanned the audience, his face lighting up when he spotted us standing side by side. In that moment, any lingering discomfort was worth it. After the ceremony, during the reception, Michael pulled us together for photos. As we posed, Tamara whispered, "I never expected this. Us here like this, you looking so happy." I supplied quietly. Life goes on, Tamara, sometimes in better directions than we anticipated. Later, as families mingled over punch and cookies, I found myself briefly alone with her while Michael showed Daniel his classroom. "I know this wasn't easy for you," she said, watching me carefully. "Thank you for doing it. I'd do anything for him. That hasn't changed." "You've changed, though," she observed. "When I saw you today, after all this time, I hardly recognized you." "Necessity is a powerful teacher," I replied. "Sometimes losing everything shows you what you're truly made of." She nodded, something like sadness crossing her features before she composed herself. "He's lucky to have you as his father." "I'm the lucky one," I answered, spotting Michael returning with Daniel. He gave me reason to become a better man. As I drove home that evening, Michael chattering excitedly beside me about his new telescope, I reflected on the day's unexpected revelations. The look on Tamara's face when she first saw me, surprise giving way to something deeper, had confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd expected to find me diminished by our divorce, still defined by her absence. Instead, she found a man who had not merely survived her betrayal, but had forged a new life from its ashes, stronger, more purposeful, and genuinely content. Her face had changed forever in that moment of recognition, and so, I realized, had the last lingering power she held over me. I was free, finally and completely, and the road ahead had never looked more promising.